Welcome to Cold Brew Conversations. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with what's brewing. On today's episode, we're going to talk with Mike Jalazo, the Executive Director of PERK. We're going to talk about what his organization does to help give second chances to people, what it means to employers that hire and give these second chances, and much more. So grab a cup, fill it up, and let's get this conversation started. I'm very excited to have you, Michael Jalazo, with Executive Director of PERK. Can you tell me a little bit about you, man? The world needs to know.
Do they want to know about me or do they want to know about PERK? I'm not really sure where one ends and one begins sometimes, but I got involved with PERK going back into the end of 2000, going into 2001, because I came back here to coach football and teach at a high school, but I'd worked in advocacy, had worked in grants before. And, teaching and coaching, I was still coaching, but I, had moved on from the idea of teaching in high school. And there was this program, there was this new grant program that the sheriff's office had won in Pinellas County. And one of the organizations that had given a letter of support or a letter of commitment was the Pinellas Ex-Offender Reentry Coalition, or PERK. And so I went to a meeting to find out, how it is that we could build this program and include these great services that PERK offered, only to find out that it wasn't really PERK offered the programs, it was the PERK meeting itself, which has existed since the late 80s and exists the fourth Thursday of every month to this day, although now it's on Zoom, where you had providers get together. And when I got involved with it, you'd have 10 to 15 to 18 providers that would get together and say, here are the services we do. Here are the things that we can offer. We got this new grant program where we got to put people in jobs, or we have new programs for training, or we have new programs for housing. So really, it made a lot of sense that you could link together, that you could say, all right, if we all meet the numbers of our programs, right? We have this funding, we have these ideas, and if we can meet our metrics, if we can serve our clients, ultimately a lot of them were the same clients and they would benefit. So that's how we got involved.
That's interesting, because you say services, so essentially it was a group of different service providers that you work to organize in a more organized unit so you can go after things together.
Yeah, I would look at it more like that was the coalition, a coalition of like-minded agencies or people who could link together and try to serve clients collectively. But I would also say it a little differently too, which is, we all had kind of our lanes that we were in, and the idea of collaboration was really still foreign to a lot of people or a lot of organizations.
Well, if we just pause for a second, because I think it's really interesting, because you and your organization, man, I've learned so much through working with you over these couple of years. And the one thing that I realized is social service, each one, like you said, they're different. The services you're talking about are the people in the community that you get to serve through different programs, right?
Yeah. In a way. So, but at that time it was, all right, I'll give you a couple examples. Operation PAR does substance abuse treatment. Mm-hmm. And so they have, different outpatient substance abuse programs. You had, let's say, Feeding Tampa Bay that provides food security. And then you had CASA, which does stuff in domestic violence. And you have PERK that works with returning citizens.
Got it.
Figure out the different services that all these organizations had. Then we can then sort of, now I have a client comes to me who, needs to get in a batterers intervention program where they're struggling for employment, but they need food. So I can say, here's where you go for a food shelter. Here's where you go for a batterers intervention program. And Gotcha. Here's what we'll do for you. So we were coordinating case management services. And what was kind of interesting, at least to me, about it was, I had come from private business where we did things like use terms like efficiency, and
Right.
efficiency and in government, those two things don't always go together. So for me, I'm looking at, here we have this grant program, we've got to roll it out. We're going to roll it out, but we're going to do it smartly. And, where we weren't wasting resources, and it would be small examples like, we had budgeted, a conference in Ohio at a host hotel for $400 a night, a rental car that I wasn't going to use, and all these other things. And I said, well, if I stay down the street at a hotel for $89 a night, don't get the rental car, just walk a block. And that's kind of how I approached it. And so we got the program off the ground, but we also were saving money. And so what was interesting about that is the people in Washington, which funded it, were fascinated. And even though that doesn't even sound slightly interesting, they were like, how did you guys get this program started, but you're also saving money? I'm like, because I didn't know a different way to do it. So working with the program director, I specifically started providing technical assistance to other grantees around the country. And it wound up in two ways. One, helping them get their programs off the ground, but two was just having them rethink a little bit about how this would work. We couldn't buy a bus pass. We couldn't spend a penny on housing. We couldn't do anything to help people when they were released. We could only help them pre-release. And so that discussion.
Now, when you say release, you mean like out of jail or prison?
When people were coming out of jail or prison, is when I got into this, Greg, we had created an in-jail program in Pinellas County Jail. We'd work with people for 12 weeks. We'd get some good momentum. We'd teach them some life skills. We got them some basic adult education. We did all this really good work to get them ready to go home. But the second they were released, we weren't able to use any resources for it. So we started making the argument differently, and it was good timing because Bush was president, his brother was governor, and Bush, the president, started talking about second chances, started talking about compassionate conservatism, and the dialogue changed to, you know what, instead of us spending more money on people to keep them in jail or prison, if we actually give them some resources so that when they get home, they might stay home or stay out longer, the amount of money we save is better than the amount of money we would spend. And it was true. And it was funny is,
Makes sense.
the sheriff here locally and all the prisons will tell you, here's what it costs them to incarcerate someone for a day. So I said, you know what? I wonder what this would look like. If we have someone who's been arrested on average, 30 days after they got out of jail, and suddenly that was 90 days, the length of time to rearrest was 60 days. Is there a value in that? So we started doing cost benefit analysis just to see, what does this look like, right? You would think that I was a rocket scientist. Nobody in the country was doing this. I swear to God. It's like funny when I tell it because they started flying me to conferences to talk about cost benefit analysis. And I gotta tell you, what I was doing was, this is as rudimentary as you get. I didn't create no formula. We're just saying, all right, look, if we keep them out altogether, that's great. But if the length of time to rearrest is increased by 30 days or 45 days or 60 days, here's what the value is. And what we found real quickly is that with this program, we saw the people who were participating when they were released, their length of time to rearrest was significantly longer. And those who continue to participate after they were released, their recidivism rate went from 65-70% to about 18%. So you started
say that one more time.
Money.
So for the recidivate, what was the rate prior to like offering services?
Yeah, so you could, it depends on where you want to look at it, but
that's staggering.
65-70%. And then when we studied this, and not only did we, other studies around the country showed the same thing. Those who were released from jail or prison who actually stayed engaged, meant working with people like you and I in a training program or an education program or case management, their recidivism rate was 18%. So just do the math. I mean, the savings was there. And that's when you really started seeing a movement out of elected officials on the federal level and state level and even the local level saying, you know what, we got to do something different.
No,
So
that makes sense, man, because it's been a humbling experience to say the least, because I think of stuff like tiny homes, and there's a lot of those guys that's kind of how I first met you, was through tiny homes and Rich and all that, was watching you had a vocational program for second chances, because it got me thinking, like, because I have everyone's one bad day away from like needing the services you offer. So I think of like a lot of family members and stuff like that could have used Perk. Maybe it would have saved their life, and I think of like the actual gratefulness that happens when they end up like getting that job in a trade, like someone working in an industry or actually getting employed somewhere, versus the alternative of, well, I just got out and I have no place to work because no one wants to hire me because of my record. So I'm hungry. Say I'm an employer, right? And I want to hire someone that went through your program. Isn't there like some sort of incentive to them to offer that second chance? Or
there's a lot of
I don't know the exact wording, but
when I leave this industry, or I walk away from this planet, because they're probably going to be one and the same, one of the legacies that I would like to leave behind is that we create more efficiencies in the system between economic development and workforce development. There are incentives, a lot of incentives for employers to give people second chances. And just off the top of my head, you've got opportunity tax credits can be up to $9,000 per individual per year. You've got on-the-job training funds, paid workers earning funds that will pay you as an employer while this person's in training for 10 to 12 weeks. You've got bonding. If people want some sort of insurance, there's a federal bonding program so you can have people insured. But then go away from those like physical things and say, when you give someone a second chance, your turnover's lower because you gave them a chance. They're not looking at their next job. They're looking at a great appreciation for the job they have. And those kind of incentives are real, and those kind of incentives, and I want to be super clear about this, get unused every year. Unused. That you have, wow. And the reasons why. It
doesn't shock me though, man. It's.
Yeah, but the reasons why is really what I want to focus on a lot in some of the work that we're doing is the system's not efficient. When we talk about WIOA paperwork, and Greg, you know this better than anyone,
yeah.
Trying to help.
I almost got WIOA tattooed on between my shoulder blades.
Yeah, is it's not efficient for an employer. It's not efficient for an employee. So if the employee won't do their paperwork, they won't get the benefits. If the employer won't do the paperwork, they're not going to get the benefits. And all of these resources go unspent, and that's got to change. And it's changed in other states where if you're in California, you have a mobile app on both sides. And
to be able to claim those credits?
Federal requirements, and yet the paperwork gets done and the resources get used. Here, we're not there yet. And it's where we need to go because there are so many benefits for employers. If you had an employer you're working with a bunch of manufacturers,
right?
They can bring so much money to their bottom line, but it has to make sense for them because when they come to you or they come to me and say, I need 20 people yesterday, they're not going to like the answer. No problem. Just give me 2 months.
Right.
They're going to go to the next person and say, I need 20 people now. They might want that extra money on their bottom line, but I'm prepared to pay people because I need to produce. We're Cold Brew. I need to produce 10,000 of these cups right now. And if I don't have my 10,000 cups, it doesn't matter. 3 months from now,
Death will happen.
Right now. So how do we close that gap? How do we bridge that divide? Is probably some of the legacy work that I'd leave behind.
No, and I really appreciate that perspective too, because like I look at things like the word subsidy. It's a subjective word, but I look at it as an investment because it's like I as a father of a disabled person, there's certain programs and subsidies that he's gotten over the years, and just random statistic, but someone on the autism spectrum usually gets over $1 million in subsidies throughout their lifetime. So if I'm an employer, I'm looking at this, if a lot of that money was towards workforce and skill development, I'm an employer looking at this like, hey, that's money I don't got to spend in actually like pre-vetting and training somebody.
Yeah.
Like it's money already spent and I don't have to do it. And then if you're going to handle my onboarding for me, like just send me a wave of applicants looking for a second chance. There's a huge value to that in so many directions, because I've also seen the actual effects to the person looking for a job.
Yeah.
You know, because you did say something that I do want to ask you a couple questions on is you said WIOA. When we come back from this quick commercial break, Mike is going to give us a breakdown of what WIOA is, or the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act.
New jobs create new changes to worry about, and that type of pressure can be overwhelming, creating uncertainty that you have no control of. It's time to stress less with new employee success by FNG Training on Udemy. Learn the ways to overly prepare yourself for a new job with tips, tricks, and training on Udemy with New Employee Success by FNG Training. And if you hurry, you can train for free. That's right, free trainings do exist. Stress less with New Employee Success. Don't forget to click the link below so that you can stress less.
What is this WIOA thing?
WIOA is the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. It's in essence how workforce dollars flow to the states from the federal government to the state government to the local government. And the idea behind it is right. The idea behind it is that we're going to spend more money on training and making investments in training. And, you know, I hate to use analogies, but the whole idea is we can either give you a fish or we can teach you to fish. And the whole idea behind WIOA is we're going to teach you to fish. We're going to make that investment because now you know how to fish, you can feed yourself. And that's kind of how it's supposed to work. That in WIOA is that once they're determined eligible, we can pay for training, we can do the OJT, we can do the PWE that we talked about earlier. Again, OJT on a job training, paid workers earnings. But when someone's WIOA eligible, it's training dollars to supplement them so that they can have a minimum wage job or they can get some certifications. And one of the things I like about working with you is we really stack certifications. So now someone has 4 or 5 or 6 different certifications, they're going to have an upwardly mobile career pathway. Whereas, you know, the person who, you know, is just going to work a regular job, they're never going to have that upward mobility. And so that's where WIOA can come in and fill so many gaps. But I got to tell you, I talked to Jennifer Brackney, who's our executive director at CareerSource, and I was asking her how much money was sent back at the end of the last fiscal year. Now, I know we were in the middle of the pandemic, all of it. I said, what do you mean? She said, I said, how much did you spend? It was 0. I didn't have any employers who took advantage of this. Now, for the first quarter of that, there was no pandemic. And think about this. Wait a minute. The first 3 quarters of that year, go July 1st, 2019 through March of 2020. Okay, there was no pandemic. And we spent 0 of those dollars because the employers think it's too hard to access. The employees think it's too hard to access.
So there's a communication gap going on here then.
Yeah.
No, that's so like the gist of WIOA, say it like what makes a client WIOA eligible?
Well, you know, and I'm going to give you the generalization.
And I know there's a lot of them, just like, you know, Cliff Notes
if
version.
you're under the poverty rate, if you're an individual under the poverty rate, if you have kids under the poverty rate, you know, are you employed or are you unemployed? The reality is that when you're dealing with returning citizens, 99% are WIOA eligible. I mean, if not 100%. When the people we work with largely as an agency, they're not coming to us, with master's degrees saying I can't find a job. You know, those people, we're not going to get them WIOA eligible. So there are criteria. some of it has some nuance from county to county, state to state. But I just start off with poverty rate, number of people in a household. And to be honest, I almost think that you might know some more of that criteria as you've gone through it, trying to help us set up a better process.
Well, I know usually whenever, because I haven't helped with a WIOA screening in a long time, but I do remember a lot of them, especially like in the Clearwater area when we did a lot of the work with the Homeless Empowerment Project over there. Almost every single one, they were able to get that letter saying they're homeless, and that qualified them. And they were able to, so once they got qualified, I know that like Career Source would get involved, and then they would like see what's available for this human. And that's one thing that I did learn too, like Career Source, they really got thorough and like screening and making sure like kind of to the point you were talking about earlier, like, like also understanding like education works differently for people, really cast netting all that right data to get the right services and connect the dots. It just seems like, for me as a human, I'm usually skeptical of like everything. So when I'm told like, oh, you can get free training, it's like, oh yeah, sure. Am I watching my own commercial? Like,
yeah. No, I hear you, man. And to try to convince people that this really is free, especially because when you talk about working at Happen, where we have our program up in Clearwater too, which is in that same area, in that community redevelopment area, every single one of these people are qualified. Being homeless in and of itself is not a qualification, but typically what surrounds being homeless all are. So, there are those who are homeless by choice, but might have resources. But, typically speaking, the population we work with who's homeless, people who are below the poverty level. And, you're talking about, if you pretty much are below poverty, if you're making $15 an hour and have a kid, you might be slightly above it if you're single. I mean, it's not that hard to find people who are eligible. What is a challenge, and we've seen this for a long time now, is getting employers who are willing to do this enormous amount of paperwork. Otherwise, we have to streamline the systems for them, and then getting the employees to do the follow-up. That's one thing, is when we work with clients who are excited to be doing what they're doing, then we get them a job, they're just a little less responsive because they're working.
No, and that's one thing though, I do want to point out that I see, so Perk, there's a big difference in like what you do versus other agencies, because there's sometimes like it might be out of scope for others. Like I didn't realize how hard it was to get like just your social security card so you can even apply for stuff. That's where I've seen Perk and the case managers and teachers of Perk, really dive in and get through those barriers of the weird stuff, the roadblocks that like, I guess like the driver's license thing too, but the even more so that I've seen is after the job. Once I've seen students that have gone through the program and clients get placed on the job, I've seen so many examples where they've kept in touch with the case manager and we're able to kind of talk things out with them before quitting a job or freaking out on another employee, or, if they have, because I remember several examples where transportation's a big issue. Like, what if they don't have that money to buy a car yet because they just got the job that's going to get them the money? So there's that, just all these examples where it's like, where it might be a barrier for other agencies. I like stuff I've seen Miss Odom do. Holy cow.
Listen, they're barriers though. They're barriers. They're barriers in the system. I mean, right now,
I'll stop selling for you, bud. Like that was, I just wanted to pitch that out there.
No, I appreciate it. But, right now we're working with the Fines and Fees Justice Center. And we have a Senate bill and a House bill that basically says you can't suspend someone's license for a criminal offense. Because what winds up happening is people come out of jail or prison. Now, if they have restitution, if it was a DUI, if it was anything related to driving, that's different. But, being arrested shouldn't automatically make you lose your driver's license. And then the issue in Florida, and really a lot of the country, is that there are fines and fees to get it back. And so, and I've been, and this is one of those things that drives me crazy, because I've been with judges who say, well, $90 to $100, that's not a big deal. But when you have no food and you have no job and you have kids, $90 to $100 is a whole heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And, and that we hope that we're feeling positive that it'll pass this year, because then at least you have a way to get to work. I mean, transportation is such a big issue. And listen, we all have epiphany.
It's the number one. That's almost the number one. It's like there's already a barrier of having the stigma and scarlet letter that might be perceived.
Yeah.
And then just getting there. So it's like, because I do want to touch on STARS a little bit, because that's a program that I've seen where it kind of equips these clients and students with, because those are some adverse times, man. You just got out, you have no license, you just got a job but no way to get there. Because I've seen students walk like for 2-3 hours and they just kept doing it just cause. And it's like, how can you not want to help?
Well, here's the thing, Greg, is we all have to be smarter. And I'll give a good example of this is, when we started St. Pete Works, and trying to work with manufacturers in South St. Pete, the South St. Petersburg CRA. The CRA, the Community Redevelopment Area, is about a 5 mile, it's really like a 3.9 mile area. There's no industrial stuff there. It's a residential area. The main industry, instead of us saying, all right, well, we need to find jobs in the CRA so people can walk to work. No, we have to understand that there's a barrier to transportation to get people to base culture, to get people to all the different kinds of companies that are sort of in mid-county in that larger industrial area. When you start looking at, God, what's the one you and I keep talking about, who's always been willing to work with us, but I can't think of them off the top of my head.
Well, Valpak.
Valpak.
They've actually hired one of the best students we ever had, and
right. But getting people to work, we've got to figure this out. And so then you say, all right, what about public transportation? Okay. So I got someone who's in South St. Petersburg, and in a car, it's going to take them 15 minutes to get to work. On our public transportation on a bus, you better kind of calendar out 2 to 2.5 hours to get that same ride. That doesn't work either. So we have to understand what the barriers are so that we can identify and come up with solutions to those barriers. One of the proposals we have sort of floating out there is to create something similar to T-BARTA, which is a driving sort of system, because even like Uber and Lyft, probably a little too expensive. It doesn't really help. But could we create something where we take people from South St. Petersburg to this area, and then we can charge it? We can charge, but something that's reasonable. And the idea for the people is this is going to be temporary until I can get my car, or I can get my license unsuspended, but that we come up with more out of the box or more creative solutions.
You're right. I got a pitch for you. Find out what our pitch to Mike is. Here's a hint. It's a shameless plea to Elon Musk, and more when we return.
Do you want to understand your employees more? Want to be able to identify with those experienced manufacturing artisans known as a machinist? Maybe you're in HR and you want to understand more about manufacturing or where parts come from. Take this crash course on what manufacturing looks like from a variety of different perspectives. There's so many ways that you can get into manufacturing, but you can just start by taking the Introduction to Manufacturing course by FNG Training on Udemy. Get started by clicking the link below. We'll see you there.
I got a pitch for you.
Sure.
What if Perk had a fleet of Teslas, and then you could schedule the pickup, drop off, and pick up and drop off after work? Like, say we could do it from a lab, and then we could just have our fleet of autonomous vehicles getting everyone to and from work.
Oh, so you want the autonomous vehicles? Listen, I think that's a great idea. Probably not realistic yet.
I mean, the startup cost is only like $37 million.
That's all.
That's it.
But
like, that's it.
All kidding aside, I pictured this out. I spreadsheeted it out. where, for making like 120, 130 grand of investment from like, say, a city council or county commission, we have vehicles, full-time drivers, and we need it's a one-time thing, because in order to get we charge, let's just say $25 a week or $35 a week, that we're going to pick you up, get you to work, get you home. So so it's still going to cost you maybe $100, $120 a month. But so then you start doing the economies of scale and realize, hey, we can make it a profitable program that's at least self-sustaining, but with the idea that until your autonomous vehicle plan comes to fruition, this would be something in between.
Hey, man, how about this? Instead of pitching, how about
the way your brain works?
How about instead of pitching you, how about you and I, because I've seen stranger things happen. Elon Musk, if you're watching this, I pitch that we have a social enterprise through Perk in getting autonomous Teslas to drive our clients to and from work. Help solve our transportation problem, Elon Musk. Do you accept the challenge?
I think he might.
Here, pitch Elon Musk, Mike. Just toss it at him. Just see.
I don't know that I could do a better pitch than what you just did, Greg.
Say it like 5 times so we can use the keyword 5 times. Elon over here.
Hey, Elon.
Hold on, I'm going to wave slow so I can get the non-green screen.
It's funny, though, since we're going to say Elon Musk a few times in the next few minutes, because Elon Musk being the chair of Tesla, I did pitch the idea to some Tesla people that they should do all of our tiny houses in the tiny house village in the Tesla solar.
Yes. And
they didn't outright dismiss it.
Hey, I'm just saying.
Those are kind of cool projects you could do.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I want my kids not to have to go get a driver's license when they grow up. Just to wrap up what Perk is, essentially, you can triage care for clients and help find services, as well as you have workforce programs like STARS. And what's in the future for Perk?
We've over the last few years, and I had a presentation this morning where I explained to people that we changed our name from, or we're doing business as People Empowering and Restoring Communities. Still
Perk, like that name.
Versus the Ex-Offender Coalition, because of it didn't really reflect what we do, because we're a full service social service.
It makes sense when you word it like that, because you went from a coalition and you formalized it to come up with better processes, man. That makes a lot of sense.
So we're doing case management. We have our housing programs. We have our sort of contractual programs with different organizations. We're an outpatient substance abuse provider. We do batterers intervention. I mean, we do a lot of cognitive classes. We have 6 offices in two counties. But I would say this, where we're going for the future of Perk, and it started with our housing program, and I would say continues with the tiny house program when we get really back to the original vision. We're also looking at the pharmacy program for needle exchange. We're looking at programs that can become self-sufficient and become profitable. I think that what people don't realize, especially in a nonprofit world, is that being a 501c3 is a tax designation. That does not mean we're in business to lose money. It means that what we do with the profits is different. So, getting back to, we're starting that program with Florida Hires we're going to be building tiny houses on trailers.
Yeah, that one's exciting, man.
Right? And then selling them. We were always fascinated by needle exchange, but really what made it even more interesting to me was I looked at all the public health stuff, saw it without getting into a big discussion, no brainer that it needs to be here. But by doing it through a nonprofit pharmacies, independent pharmacies, it blew my mind away when I did the research, how profitable they were. So now we can run the program and then use profits to support our other programs. And so I would say what you're going to see in the future of Perk is really more and more movement into social enterprise spaces that, because in Tiny House, we started a new class.
That makes sense.
I've got 17 people who should theoretically walk away from that class working in the construction trades.
Now, Boss is Boss is still there, right?
Yeah, Jacquees is one of the early graduates. He's one of our full-time employees.
I would love to have him on because we have like old footage of like just working with him. I love working with the guy. So, and seeing what he's gone through and done and what he does for his students, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
and it's real. It's when you're working with Jacquees, his nickname is Boss, but when you're working with Jacquees, it's real because he lived a different life, and that life still follows him around sometimes, but he's changed his life and is more interested in giving back to the community that maybe he took a little something from, and that he, you could see the sense of pride in everything he does. And when we put him in charge of programs, how important it is to him to do a good job, to make sure it's done right. I was texting with him earlier because he wants to get a bigger dumpster because we're doing this cleanup program in South St. Petersburg, but he's got more projects. He's like, and if we were able to get a bigger dumpster, I'm like, I go, Boss, you realize you have a dumpster back there already? He goes, oh man, I never even thought about it. Now I said, but I'll get you a bigger one, because again, right. The city working with us and our programs, they're going to bring the big dumpster over, and so we can continue to do what we're doing. And and building the tiny houses, getting that first one done, but then we're going to build the second one right on site, and we're building the third one at the Work Release Center, and really making those programs self-sufficient so that we as an agency, look, we're going to go after grants, we're going to go after funding. People who want to give to us and see our vision certainly can reach out through exoffender.org and donate, but they could also reach out directly to me through that website, because we're glad to share the vision of what we're doing, because there are things that I think are models that'll be replicated in other areas.
I couldn't agree more, man.
Greg, I know you're aware of is, so we bought the Continental, which is where our big housing program is, but we're doing a renovation of that kitchen with Feeding Tampa Bay, and Feeding Tampa Bay is
cool.
Is expanding prescription meals and hot after school meals to a 10-county area.
How cool,
We're going
man.
to use a kitchen for it. They're going to get training in culinary, 24/7 production.
That's a massive kitchen too, man.
Right, but then they're also going to get CDL, because they're going to they're going to be people who do CDL classes. They get their hours behind the wheel, because that's again, working CDL and ex-offenders has always made sense, but we couldn't get them the hours behind the wheel. Now Feeding Tampa Bay is going to give them the hours for 6 months. Then they move on to jobs that start off at 45.
Whoa, how cool, man. So just because I only know a little bit about Feeding Tampa Bay, but because I know Feeding Tampa Bay has their own fleet of semis. So they'll be able to get their road time driving.
That's correct.
And delivering food.
That's correct.
How stinking cool, man.
I mean, you start putting all the pieces together. They could be living in a house that our people in our programs built. We're going to have them working in a production kitchen on our property, getting their hours behind the CDL and moving into good career pathways. My only jealousy is, and it's legitimate, is some of these programs we create, they make better money than I do. So sometimes I want to become a client, see how much money I can make, but it's real, it's legitimate opportunity. And that's how you look. I'm going to finish with this. You guys cut this up however you want. When your people will say, what's your mission? I can tell you our mission. I can give you our vision statement. I can do all that. But what nonprofit people sometimes struggle with is, why do you do what you do? The why. The why for me is so easy. I want to live in a safer community. Everything we do makes my community safer, makes my community safer for me, for my 10-year-old daughter, for the people like you with kids, to all of us.
Yep.
Who want to live in a safer community. And the best way to do that is give people the opportunity to grow in their careers, make legitimate livings. Our community becomes safer. We talk about needle exchange. Our community is safer when more people go into treatment who otherwise wouldn't have. Our community is safer when people, again, when we teach people how to fish versus giving them a fish.
Man, I appreciate that, because that's it. I know you were at one point a coach, and you could definitely feel it. It's like when you speak, you get that passion voice going. It's like you can feel it, man. So definitely appreciate that. And I definitely want to have you back on more because we're working on some really cool stuff. I'm really excited about Move Up and the working with the cohort kids, cohort of champions. Like it,
I think one of the things that you and I are working on with Move Up and the cohort of champions, and really with stars, because they all sort of blend in together, we're creating the kind of content that future interviews. This is going to replace that. I mean, this isn't being aspirational. This makes more sense than now you're an employer and I can look at a piece of paper for 10 minutes, or I can watch, questions answered streaming and get to know someone before I ever meet them. Come on, man. That's cool stuff.
Heck yeah. And that's where it's like, I'm really grateful for the opportunity, man. And I'll close it up with this because I know it's the ending because I have an empty cup.
My cup's not, because all I do is talk.
Chug. But very, very grateful to have you on, man. And this is going to be fun chopping this up because we got quite a bit of footage, man.
Yeah, listen, anytime you guys want to do something, I'm in.
Deal.
This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to change the world. And I know that sounds stupidly aspirational, but really, it's not that aspirational. This is how you actually affect change, by actually doing it.
Amen, bro. Amen. You know what else I need from you?
What's that? Oh, got a high five. And get far enough along with Greg. I got to really work on my Zoom high fiving.
Thanks for watching Cold Brew Conversations. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with what's brewing.